The medal ceremony was still going on behind the blast doors when Colonel Marcus Webb walked away. He found her in the detention wing. Not a cell, technically, but close enough. The observation room was cold, sterile, and the thing inside it was curled into a corner like she was trying to disappear into the wall itself. Blue-gray skin, 2 large eyes that reflected light like a cat's, and a frame so small she could have passed for a human child, if not for the 4 delicate arms folded protectively around her knees. "That's your reward?" Sergeant Chen had asked him an hour ago, voice dripping with disbelief. "They're giving you the last Vel'kari?" Reward. The word sat wrong in his mouth, like chewing on metal. 17 years of service, 3 wars, 2 Purple Hearts, and the Coalition decided his prize was a refugee. The sole survivor of a species, the Dominion had spent 6 months systematically erasing from existence. He pressed his palm to the scanner. The door hissed open. She didn't look up. Her secondary arms tightened around her primary ones, a self-protective gesture he'd seen in traumatized soldiers more times than he could count. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said. Her voice was barely a whisper, accented but clear. "That is what the last one said, before they hurt me." Marcus pulled over a chair and sat down, keeping distance between them. "I'm Colonel Webb. They've assigned you to me." Assigned. She finally looked up, and those silver eyes held something sharper than fear, contempt. "Your language has many words for ownership. I didn't ask for this." "Neither did I." She paused. "Neither did my people, when your coalition stood by and watched us die." The accusation landed like a blow to the chest. Because she wasn't wrong. The coalition had calculated the cost of intervention against the Dominion, run the numbers, and decided that one small species on one small moon wasn't worth the resources. Marcus had been there. He followed orders. And now, apparently, this was his penance. "What's your name?" he asked. She was quiet for a long moment. "Vel'kari do not share names with strangers. Then what do I call you?" Those silver eyes studied him, weighing, measuring, finding him wanting. "You may call me what your people have been calling me since they found me in the ruins. The last one. It is accurate enough. That's not a name. Neither is reward." She turned away. Yet here we are. Marcus stood, suddenly exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with his body. "They're transferring you to my ship tomorrow. You'll have quarters, privacy, no one will bother you." "How generous," she said flatly. "A comfortable cage." He had no answer for that. So he left. That night, he pulled up everything the Coalition had on the Vel'kari. Most of it was classified, but his clearance was high enough. He read about their cities of living crystal, their art that sang when touched, their scholars who had mapped dimensions humans couldn't even perceive. He read about how they had refused to develop weapons, believing violence was a spiritual corruption. He read about how the Dominion had taken 6 months to kill 4 billion of them. And he read about her, Specimen V1, as the reports called her. A student. Young by her species standards, barely an adult. Found hiding in a collapsed archive, surrounded by the preserved knowledge of her entire civilization, trying to save what she could. The reports noted that she had not spoken for the first 3 weeks of her captivity. That she had refused food until they threatened force. That she had attempted to escape twice, injuring herself badly the second time. Nowhere in the reports did anyone bother to record her name. Marcus closed his datapad and stared at the ceiling until dawn. She refused to leave her quarters for the first week aboard the Ardent. Marcus didn't push. He had the ship's cook prepare meals based on the limited Vel'kari dietary data they had, mostly wrong, judging by how much came back uneaten. He posted a guard outside her door, then removed him when she stopped sleeping entirely. He sent her reading materials, entertainment options, communication access. All of it was ignored. On the 8th day, Marcus found her in the cargo bay at 300 hours. She was standing in front of the viewport, all 4 arms wrapped around herself, staring at the stars. She didn't turn when he approached, but her shoulders tensed. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. "My people did not sleep as yours do." Her voice was raw, like she'd been crying. "We entered a state of, there is no word in your language. A waking rest. A time when our minds would touch the minds of those we loved." She pressed one delicate hand against the viewport. "Now when I try, there is only silence. An emptiness so vast I cannot find its edges." Marcus stood beside her, looking out at the same stars. "I lost my unit on Kepler 7. 23 people I'd served with for years. For months afterward, I'd turn to say something to someone who wasn't there anymore. That is not the same." "No," he agreed. "It's not. I'm sorry." She finally looked at him, silver eyes searching. "Why do you apologize? You did not kill them." "I didn't stop it either." Something flickered across her face. Surprise, perhaps. You could not have. No single being could have. Doesn't make it feel any different. They stood in silence for a long while. Outside, the stars wheeled slowly past as the ship continued its patrol route. Kira, she said finally. What? My name. It is Kira Da. Her secondary arms tightened around her primary ones. Among my people, names were given in trust. They contained part of our essence. To share one was to share something sacred. Marcus understood the weight of what she was offering. Why tell me? Because you apologized. She turned back to the viewport. Because you did not have to, and you did. Because you have not once looked at me like I am something to be studied or pitied or owned. A pause. And because I am tired of being called the last one. It is true, but it is not all that I am. Kira, Marcus repeated, feeling the shape of it. It's a good name. It means one who carries light. Her voice cracked slightly. My mother chose it. I'm Marcus. I know. I read your file. For the first time, the ghost of something that might have been humor crossed her features. You have a very long disciplinary record for someone of your rank. He almost smiled. I've never been good at following stupid orders. Perhaps that is why they assigned me to you. She looked at him again, and this time, there was something new in her gaze. Not trust. Not yet, but the possibility of it. They did not know what to do with either of us. Over the following weeks, things shifted. Slowly, carefully, like two wounded animals learning to share a space. Kira started leaving her quarters. She would appear in the mess hall at odd hours, sitting in corners, watching the crew with those two keen eyes. At first, the soldiers avoided her. Nobody knew how to act around the last survivor of a genocide, especially one their government had tacitly permitted. But Marcus noticed how she watched them. Not with fear or resentment, but with a kind of desperate curiosity. Like she was trying to understand how beings could be so violent and yet sit together laughing over bad coffee and worse jokes. Your people are contradictions, she told him one evening, as they shared a meal in the small observation lounge that had become their unofficial meeting spot. She'd started eating more, still not enough, but better. You wage wars that consume worlds, yet you name your ships after virtues. You build weapons of mass destruction, then cry when you use them. We're complicated, Marcus admitted. You are chaos given form. But she said it without malice. My people believed that true civilization required unity of purpose, harmony of action. We thought you humans were primitive, unfinished, too driven by emotion to ever achieve enlightenment. And now? She was quiet for a moment, picking at her food with her secondary hands. A gesture he'd learned indicated deep thought. Now I think perhaps we were wrong. Our unity made us beautiful, but it also made us fragile. When the Dominion came, we could not adapt. We could not fight. We could not even conceive of violence on the scale required to survive. That's not a failing, is it not? Her silver eyes met his. 4 billion of my people are dead because we could not bring ourselves to kill. Because we believed, until the very end, that the Dominion would see reason. That surely no species could be so committed to destruction. The Dominion aren't representative of, I know. She cut him off gently. I have watched your crew, Marcus. I have seen how they protect each other, how they grieve their dead, how they rage against injustice. Your capacity for violence is matched by your capacity for love. It is, unsettling and fascinating. She reached out with one of her primary hands, hesitated, then let it fall. I think perhaps the universe needs beings like you. Beings who can fight when fighting is necessary, but who never stop being horrified by it. My people could not do both. You can. It was, Marcus realized, the first time she'd said anything positive about humanity. He wasn't sure what to do with that. The distress call came in at 847 from a civilian transport in the Kepler system. Dominion raiders had intercepted it, a rare deep space attack, opportunistic rather than strategic. By the time the Ardent arrived, 2 of the transport's 3 sections were already venting atmosphere. Marcus led the boarding party himself. It was reckless, probably stupid, but he'd seen too many junior officers freeze up in close combat. The Dominion didn't take prisoners, and every second mattered. They fought through 3 decks of the crippled ship, pulling survivors from wreckage, putting down Dominion soldiers with the efficiency that 17 years of combat had drilled into Marcus's bones. The raiders were retreating by the time they reached the final compartment, a sealed cargo bay where the ship's manifest indicated 37 civilians had been hiding. 37. When they cut through the doors, they found 12 still breathing. Among them were 4 children. Not human, some species Marcus didn't recognize, small and pale with too many joints in their limbs. They huddled together in the corner, keening in a frequency that set his teeth on edge. Their parents, one of the surviving adults, whispered, before passing out from blood loss. Marcus looked at the bodies scattered across the bay, counted 4 that matched the children's species, felt something cold settle in his stomach. "Sir?" Lieutenant Park appeared at his elbow. "We need to move. Dominion reinforcements are 20 minutes out." They carried the survivors back to the Ardent. Medics swarmed the wounded. Someone took the children to the ship's small medical bay, where they sat in a silent row, staring at nothing. Marcus went to his quarters, stripped off his armor, and stood under the shower until the water ran cold. The faces of the dead floated behind his eyes every time he blinked. He didn't hear the door open. "You saved them." Kira's voice, soft, from behind him. He didn't turn. "Not enough of them. 12 people are alive because of you, including 4 children who would otherwise be 12. He finally looked at her. She stood in the doorway of the bathroom, her silver eyes fixed on him without embarrassment or discomfort. "There were 37 in that bay, Kira. I saved a third. You saved 12. She stepped closer. 12 more than the Coalition saved when my world burned. Something cracked in his chest. He braced his hands against the wall, water streaming down his back, and let out a breath that had been trapped somewhere deep for months, maybe years. "I keep thinking," he said, "about what would have happened if I'd been faster. If I'd pushed harder for us to intervene in the VKL system. You would have been court-martialed. Removed from command. Unable to save anyone at all." Her voice was gentle but firm. "I have studied your records, Marcus. You argued for intervention. You were overruled. You followed the orders of beings who had more power than conscience. That's not an excuse." "No, it is not." She moved closer still, close enough that he could feel the slight chill of her skin, so different from human warmth. "But it is the truth, and the truth matters." One of her secondary hands reached out, hesitated, then pressed lightly against his shoulder blade. The touch was cool and strange and achingly gentle. "When I was found in the archives," she said quietly, "I wanted to die. I had failed my people, failed to save the knowledge, failed to do anything except hide and survive." "That's not, let me finish." Her other hands curled at her sides. "A human soldier found me. He could have left me there. His orders were to sweep for Dominion survivors, not to rescue refugees. But he carried me out. He gave me water. He told me that surviving was not a failure, that someone had to remember." She moved around to face him, looking up with those silver eyes that held the weight of 4 billion ghosts. "I did not believe him then. I'm beginning to believe him now. Kira, you are not responsible for what the Coalition chose not to do." Her primary hand rose, hovering near his face. "You are responsible for what you do now. For the 12 lives on this ship. For the children who will grow up because you fought for them." A pause. "For me." He caught her hand without thinking. Her skin was cool and smooth. Her fingers longer than a human's, with an extra joint that made them curve differently. She didn't pull away. "I don't know how to save everyone," he admitted. "No one does." Her fingers curled around his. "But you try anyway. That is what makes you human." A soft sound, almost a laugh. "It is infuriating. And it is the best thing about your species." They stood like that for a long moment, water still dripping from his hair, her cool hand anchored in his warm one. "The children," she said finally, "they are Vel'kari." Marcus stared at her. "What? They are not full-blooded. Mixed heritage. Their parents must have been part of a hybrid community we did not know existed." Her silver eyes gleamed. "I am not the last, Marcus. I was never the last." The children's names were Sela, Tiv, Mira, and Jan. They were terrified of everything. The ship, the humans, the vast emptiness of space that had swallowed their parents. They huddled together in the quarters assigned to them, refusing to eat, refusing to speak to anyone. Anyone except Kira. Marcus watched through the observation window as she sat with them. She spoke in a language he didn't understand, her voice rising and falling in patterns that seemed to resonate in his chest. Her 4 arms moved in gestures that held meaning he couldn't parse. "What is she saying?" "Doctor," Chen asked, standing beside him. "I don't know. But look at them." The children were leaning toward her now, their 2 large eyes fixed on her face. The smallest one, Mira, reached out with trembling hands to touch Kira's arm. Kira didn't flinch. She wrapped all 4 of her arms around the child and held her while she wept. "She's teaching them how to grieve," Chen said softly. Over the following days, Kira barely left the children's side. She slept in their quarters, ate when they ate, moved when they moved. She taught them songs Marcus had never heard, and slowly, tentatively, they began to sing back. But Marcus could see what it was costing her. She grew thinner, her blue-gray skin taking on a pallid undertone. Dark circles appeared beneath her silver eyes. When she thought no one was watching, she would press her hands against her temples and breathe in sharp, shallow gasps. "You're killing yourself," Marcus told her on the fourth night, when he found her collapsed against the wall outside the children's quarters. "I am teaching them." Her voice was barely a whisper. "They need to know who they are, where they come from, what it means to carry our people's memory. They need you alive to do that. They need," she stopped, swallowed. "They need to not be alone. The way I was alone. The way I have been alone for," she broke off, and Marcus realized she was crying. It was different from human tears. No sound. Just silvery liquid tracing tracks down her cheeks, pooling in the hollows of her collarbone. He sat down beside her. "Tell me, the connection." Her hands clenched against her thighs. "When I am with them, I can feel it. The link that all Vel'kari share, the warmth, the presence. For the first time since my world burned, I am not alone inside my own mind." A shuddering breath. "But they are children, Marcus. They do not know how to regulate the connection. They take and take, and I give and give. And I cannot." Then stop. "I cannot stop." Her silver eyes blazed. "They will die without the connection. They will go mad from the silence the way I almost did. I will not let them suffer that. So you'll let them kill you instead, if that is what is required." She met his gaze without flinching. "You would do the same." And the hell of it was she was right. He would. He had a dozen times for people he cared about far less. There has to be another way. He gripped her shoulders, felt the delicate bones beneath her skin. "You said the connection is shared. Regulated. Can't you teach them to control it? It takes years of training. Decades. They do not have. Then we find another way." His voice was harder than he intended. "I'm not watching you kill yourself, Kira. Not after everything. Why does it matter to you?" Her voice cracked. "I am a burden. A reminder of your people's failure. A responsibility you never asked for. You're not a burden." He cupped her face in his hands, tilting it up to meet his eyes. "You're not a reminder. You're Kira. You're the strongest person I've ever met. And those children need you alive for the next 50 years, not the next 50 days." She stared at him. "You cannot understand what you're asking." The silence. "Then let me help." The words came out before he'd fully thought them through. "You said the connection is about not being alone. So don't be alone. Let me be there. You are human. You not have, I have whatever it takes." He pressed his forehead against hers, felt the cool smoothness of her skin. "Teach me. Show me. Let me try." For a long moment she was silent. Then her hands rose, trembling, to cover his. "It will hurt," she whispered. "Forming a connection with a non-Vel'kari. There are no records of it ever being done. It could damage you. I've been damaged before. This is different. This is," she closed her eyes. "This is trusting me with your mind. Your essence. Everything you are." "Good." He pulled back enough to look at her. "About time I trusted someone with that." The connection, when it came, was like nothing Marcus had ever experienced. It started as pressure, a strange weight behind his eyes, a tingling at the base of his skull. Then it expanded, and suddenly he was drowning in sensation. Colors he had no names for. Sounds that resonated in his bones. The taste of starlight and the smell of living crystal and the weight of 4 billion voices crying out in unison before falling silent forever. He felt Kira's grief like a physical blow. The loneliness that had been her constant companion for months. The guilt of survival. The terror that she was somehow not enough to carry her people's memory alone. And beneath all of that, something else. Something warm and fierce and fragile. Hope. He opened his eyes to find her staring at him, tears streaming down her face. "You stayed," she whispered. "You felt all of that, and you stayed. I'm not going anywhere." His voice came out rough, scraped raw by emotions that weren't entirely his own. "Neither are you." She laughed. The first real laugh he'd ever heard from her. It sounded like bells and breaking glass and something beautiful fighting to survive. "Colonel Webb." Her silver eyes shone. "You are a very strange human, I've been told. You do realize what this means." Her hands found his again, all 4 of them twining through his fingers. "A connection of this nature, among my people, it is sacred. Permanent. You have bound yourself to me in ways that cannot be undone." "Good," he said again, and meant it. She kissed him then, or something like a kiss, her forehead pressed to his, her breath mingling with his breath, her consciousness wrapped around his like a blanket made of starlight. It was strange and alien and absolutely perfect. When they finally pulled apart, she was smiling. "The children," she said. "They will need a teacher. They have you. They have us." She stood, pulling him up with her. "I cannot do this alone, Marcus. I was never meant to. My people believed in connection above all else. One mind cannot carry the weight of a civilization. But together, he agreed. Through the window, he could see the children stirring. Mira was the first to notice them, her silver eyes widening, her small hands pressing against the glass. And Marcus felt it through the connection, a flicker of warmth, of recognition, of hope. They were not the last. They were the beginning. In the months that followed, the Arden became something it had never been before, a home. The children grew stronger, their connection to Kira stabilizing, their grief slowly transforming into something bearable. They learned human languages and human customs and developed a particular fondness for human ice cream, which made Kira roll all four of her eyes, but smile anyway. Marcus officially adopted them. The paperwork was a nightmare. Nobody had protocols for a human colonel adopting 4 half-Vel'kari orphans, but he'd never been good at following stupid regulations anyway. When the coalition offered him a promotion that would have taken him away from the Ardent, he declined. When they offered him retirement, he laughed. "You're staying because of her," Admiral Chen said during her quarterly inspection, watching Kira and the children through the observation window. "I'm staying because of them," Marcus corrected. "All of them." The Admiral studied him for a long moment. "You know what they're calling you on the networks? The soldier who adopted a species. That's dramatic. That's the news cycle for you." She paused. "The Dominion is still out there, Webb. They're going to come for the Vel'kari remnant eventually. You know that. I know. And you're still staying." Marcus watched Kira kneel down to help Jan with something, a toy maybe or a puzzle. Her silver eyes caught the light as she smiled, and through the connection, he felt her joy like sunshine on his skin. "When I swore my oath," he said slowly, "I promised to protect those who couldn't protect themselves, to stand between the darkness and the people who needed me." He turned to face the Admiral. "This is that oath. Maybe the most important version of it I'll ever keep." Chen sighed. "You always were a pain in my ass, Webb. Thank you, ma'am." She left. And Marcus went to join his family. Because that's what they were now. Kira with her silver eyes and ancient grief and stubborn hope. The children with their 2 long limbs and their strange songs and their fierce, fragile love. And him, a tired soldier who had finally found something worth fighting for beyond the next mission. The Vel'kari would survive. Not as they had been. Nothing could bring that back, but as something new. Something that carried the best of their heritage and mixed it with the chaos and contradiction and relentless hope of humanity. And Marcus would be there. For every step. For every struggle. For every moment of beauty and grief and everything in between. She was not the last of her kind. He had sworn to make sure of that. And he always kept his promises.